I'd like to introduce you to, or in a lot of cases, reintroduce you to Dr. Ben González, Doc G from Atlantis Medical Wellness Center. By the way, their phone number, if you find anything interested while we're here, is 301-622-2722. They're local here in Silver Spring, Maryland. So his real name's Dr. Benjamin González, medical director at Atlantis Medical Wellness Center.
Let me also mention that he's 24 years active military service. Thank you for your service, Doc. I believe it was Air Force, if I remember correctly, and I think I do because we fly you in every Doc G's Corner, right?
Both, actually. I think he was in the Army, too.
Yeah. And graduate of University of Arizona College of Medicine and, of course, a board-certified physician.
Yes, background in molecular genetics. He's been using CBD in his practice for, I think, over a decade. Not to date the guy, but he's got experience here. Doc G, welcome into Understanding CBD today, and how are you?
Gentlemen, I'm doing well with the sun out today. It's feeling really good.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day, and really we appreciate you joining us today for the show and being available for all the questions that we have for you. And we promise to keep you busy today. It will be worth our time. But I wanted to start out with, because we get a lot of questions about talking to their physicians and their doctors about CBD. So is there any clarity around what doctors are allowed to say regarding CBD to their patients?
Yeah, and that's a difficult subject. Obviously, there's a great deal of ambiguity on this subject. This is due to the confusing nature and the conflicting federal and state laws. The number one issue is that both CBD and THC, the compounds themselves, or marijuana, are used in the same context in both the law and the medical narrative, and that gets very confusing. CBD derived from cannabis plant with a THC level greater than 0.3% is illegal. The FDA has approved a drug called Epidiolex for specific pediatric seizure disorder that doctors can prescribe. However, physicians cannot prescribe CBD in of itself other than the FDA-approved Epidiolex. However, they can recommend CBD. Because of poor regulation of over-the-counter CBD products, I think it's very important for a physician to ensure if they're recommending a CBD product, that they have an idea of a high-quality, well-tested source for that CBD product. And here's the legal trap for physicians. Many legal circles tell physicians that they are at higher risk for liability or risk for they risk their medical license if they make specific CBD recommendations. And if they don't, then they are putting the patient at risk of choosing junk CBD products on their own. So this is an awful trap. It's an awful trap for physicians and not fair to the patient. In my practice, I focus on the patient, so I make clear recommendations based on good research and what I feel would benefit the patient. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. So for most of the physicians, is there a certain guidance that's needed from Congress, from maybe the medical board, or is there something that there is hope for that they'll be like, hey, we got the word, we're good to go?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not that simple. We practice what's called on gold standards, and these gold standards are determined by studies and medical boards and research and all that. Unfortunately, physicians are pushed and pulled by multiple groups: Congress, local, state, and federal medical boards, specialty boards, insurance companies, and each insurance company has their own individual rules that often conflict. As I mentioned, state rules conflict with federal rules, and many times these rules conflict with what is best for the patient. It boils down to the individual physician's focus on each patient and what is best for them and what risk the physician is willing to take to do the right thing for that patient. So to answer your question, there is no single entity that's going to let a physician know whether it's the right thing or not. Congress will do their thing and trying to separate the narrative of CBD versus THC, and that's their job. Our job as physicians is to fit it into our medical standards.
So, Doc, if you had a crystal ball, where do you see the future of CBD training for physicians of tomorrow going?
So as far as training's concerned, right now there isn't a lot going on. As far as the future, remember all those decades when CBD was classified under marijuana as the same compound and as an illegal Schedule I drug, because because of that, research was limited for decades. We're just now starting to catch up. So in order for training to occur, we need more studies, more human studies. Right now, there are a lot of good studies on animals. There's great animal studies out there. There's a few human studies out there, but it's going to take time. Part of the problem, again, is standardization, standardizing the product itself, standardizing the medications, and standardizing training. That's going to take a little time. That's one of the subjects of the book I'm writing. I'm writing a book on CBD and medical use of CBD. There's a lot of information out there, but most of that, in fact, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books here right now that I'm reading on the subject that are written by nurses, non-medical individuals, nurses, and a few doctors, and they all say the same thing: we got to catch up. We got to catch up. So training, formal training, won't happen anytime soon, but hopefully within the next 5 years, we'll see more training.
Amen.
Yeah. So are you saying there's really not much solid academic research?
There's a lot of good research out there on the safety of CBD. There's just not a lot of human studies out there for specific medical conditions, the things that we talk about that CBD helps for, whether it be anything from anxiety, PTSD, to physical complaints of orthopedic issues and gut issues, weight loss, things like that.
Doc, from your experience in the medical community, are there any strong sort of anti-CBD feelings or negative feelings towards CBD?
It's funny you should mention that. I mean, your timing is perfect with that, because just 3 days ago, a discussion was published on MedPage today. MedPage is one of the sources that physicians look at for information. And the author was not a physician. However, the article was presented on a physician's forum. And that bottom line, that it was clearly biased towards anti-CBD and cannabis use, as it continued to confuse the CBD-THC narrative. Unfortunately, it reflected the overall continued stigma of CBD use in medicine, and it continually gets perpetuated in medical forums. So that's right now in the medical community, it's still distant. CBD is still put at a distance.
Gotcha. You know, and because of this, it sends a lot of people, when they have a symptom or they have a condition, to look up in Dr. Google and find the information. What do you? Is that a good way of getting research done?
Yeah, good old Dr. Google. So I actually encourage patients to go online. Dr. Google is not the best source of recommendations, but it's a great source to start the narrative. I love it when somebody brings in Dr. Google information for me. It gives me the opportunity to clarify what's going on. The problem with Dr. Google is that when you research something on Google, you don't get just medical information. You fall into the trap of these algorithms, these marketing algorithms that start sending you information that's targeted to sell you specific services or products, and then the information is biased towards that. So you're not getting unbiased information, number one. Number two, as you are searching, there's all these algorithms tend to be biased towards what you've searched in the past, and then now you're the target, the information that you get is even more narrow and focused on just what they want to sell you.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, Doc G, I'm going to pause you here for a sec. We need to take a break. We'll be right back with more Dr. Benjamin González here on Understanding CBD. Welcome back here, everybody, to Understanding CBD. Hello there, Max Sobel.
Hello there, Stephen Woolman.
Today we're with Dr. Benjamin González, Medical Director at Atlantis Medical Wellness Center in Silver Spring, Maryland. The phone number for the clinic in Silver Spring is 301-622-2722. Call anytime. Mention you heard him on the show here today. That's always helpful. And the number to call in for the show, since we are live, is 410-922-6680. We've already got some questions for some shy people that didn't want to get on the phone, which we'll ask later. We do have a call waiting. But before we do that, hey, Doc, you ready for some more questions?
Sure.
Doc, one of the most fun things we had was picking the music for you. How'd we do with that song?
I love it.
Oh, sorry, that was first choice, and the song title is Doctor Love.
Yeah, well, certainly Dr. Love. So, Doc, I want to piggyback on it. We were just talking about your patients and Dr. Google, which you are not. And so a patient walks in, they've got their little piece of paper out with their research from Dr. Google. My question is, what are they asking you specifically around CBD, the patients that do come in?
The number one question that I get is the safety of CBD with all the other medications that people are taking. The best part of that question is I have a very clear answer, and that is there has never been a single documented safety issue in the medical literature with the proper use of properly sourced CBD. What is not clear is the poorly regulated production and sales of CBD over the counter. I mean, the good news is that most poorly produced CBD means that there's very little, if any, CBD in the over-the-counter product itself. However, there have been products that have had contamination issues with other or improper THC concentrations, and that is why it's always best to seek the advice of a physician knowledgeable in the use of CBD and its sourcing. Of course, all the other questions have to do usually with that individual's medical condition. What is it? Can CBD help me with, fill in the blank for the medical condition?
Oh, that's great. Mm-hmm. Thanks for that tip. And it's good to know the major concern there. We do have a call here. This is Vicky from Pikesville. Vicky, also known as Mrs. Mailsack.
Hey, Vicky.
Hi, Dr. G. Hi, Steve. Hi, Max. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes. Yeah, perfect.
Oh, good. I do have a question for Dr. G.
Yeah.
So I work at the Maryland Department of Health. Maryland Department of Transportation. I'm a registered nurse. And I work in a department that takes care of people who have medical conditions and lose their license because of that and trying to get them back on the road safely. So in my professional career, I've seen so many issues with sleep, specifically, sleep apnea, insomnia, daytime sleepiness. And it's an issue because people end up losing their license and, their freedoms. So I just wanted to hear your medical opinion about how CBD can be helpful for issues that patients have with sleep.
Yeah, that's a common question I get. And as you can guess, sleep is not a simple subject. Anything from the outside stressors causing sleep disruption to internal stressors, medical stressors, weight issues, all these things contribute to different sleep issues. And a point I want to make about CBD in general for most medical conditions is that CBD is used as an adjunct or as a way to help these issues. Very few things can be cured with CBD in and of itself. I'll make that clear. CBD has been a very powerful tool in my practice and in my patients that have sleep issues. Why? Because CBD usually manages multiple different things. It acts as an anti-inflammatory, powerful antioxidant. So if there's an underlying medical problem that causes inflammation like diabetes or something like that, if CBD calms down that inflammatory issue, it helps calm down the brain to allow for better sleep through the night. Not just getting to sleep, but staying asleep through the night. CBD in and of itself, a properly sourced full spectrum CBD, doesn't make you sleepy, it doesn't make you somnolent, but it calms the brain down to allow for better sleep. When you combine that with taking care of those outside stressors, underlying micronutrient issues, it's a very powerful tool for my patients with trouble sleeping.
That's great.
Great. Does that help answer your question, Vicki?
Did that help?
Yes, absolutely. And, really helpful.
While we have you on the phone, Mrs. Mailsack, do you have any other questions that you may come up with from the nursing perspective that you would like to ask the doc?
Well, less with the nursing, but more for myself. I've noticed that sometimes when I take my dose of CBD, I feel as though I'm not like drawn to the refrigerator, drawn to like snacks and salty and sweets and things like that. So I just wanted to see if that's a correlation between CBD. I know Steve has talked about in the past, like how it helps with his cravings, and, you know, that kind of compulsiveness, and just wanted to hear a little bit more about your take on that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, I spent a lot of time researching. In fact, right here in one of my files here, one of my CBD research, I have a whole list of discussions on that very subject. As you may or may not know, I'm the weight loss doctor. And I don't like that term weight loss, by the way. I do metabolic repair to help with bringing not only the body fat and the weight down, but to keep it down, sustained weight loss. And CBD can be very powerful. I love this. So your body naturally has CB receptors in your gut, from brain to toes, literally, CB receptors. And in your gut, you have both kinds of CB receptors, CB1, CB2, and that affects your gut health. CBD helps calm the brain from food cravings, the pathways in the brain for food addictive behavior. In addition, it allows for more balanced gut hormone production, which allows for improved eating habits. So it's not just one thing that CBD is taking care of in this subject. It's taking care of multiple things that helps reduce the overall craving. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of CBD to allow you to stop those cravings or improve your ability to hold off on that. Also, it allows for improved motivation for exercise and moving, right? You get that antioxidant effect. So it's pretty powerful. I could talk a whole hour on that subject. But I hope that helped a little bit. Did you catch what I meant?
Yes, very helpful. Thank you so much for clarifying that.
Awesome. Vic, thanks for calling in. We appreciate it. You always support the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms.
Happy
Mailsack.
guys.
Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, so we have some more questions for you as well here. And, you know, one of the questions I have for you is we talk a lot about CBD on the show. And as we know, you know, in Maryland, there's a medical marijuana program. And I was curious if there is a point where you would suggest someone that would need to look at the other cannabinoids in the cannabis plant and looking towards THC. Does that ever come up with any of your patients?
Now, say that again. Are you talking about?
Well, so CBD has
combination use?
Yeah, or do you ever? You know, we're talking always about CBD, but you know, THC isn't an evil cannabinoid. It's just, you know, it does some different things and it has some different regulation issues. But does it ever come up with your patients where you would suggest that they look to THC for certain symptoms?
Absolutely, especially in my patients that struggle with the side effects of cancer treatments or just from the cancer itself, for disrupted eating behavior, the lack of appetite. That's when THC can be an additional component. It's interesting that you would have a different effect than we're just taking a full spectrum CBD that helps suppress your eating habit. Well, THC can actually increase that your appetite. So those are some of the subjects that I use it for. And to be clear, CBD is an interesting term. We throw the term CBD out there as if it's a single entity, and it's not. CBD refers to multiple different spectrums, so to speak, of what CBD is. It includes different compounds like terpenes, terpenoids, et cetera. So I hope that helped.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah,
it does. And I wanted to kind of jump on that as well because a lot of consumers are getting marketed to right now with a new, quote unquote, new form of THC, which is Delta 8 THC. They claim there's a loophole in the regulations, and it's out on the marketplace. You know, I just wanted to see if you could touch on that for the consumers here. What is Delta 8 THC, and what can people expect in buying these products?
I'm really glad you asked that question because that is, you know, there's always ways around things, right? Especially when it comes to loopholes in law and loopholes in medications, and it just drives me nuts to chase these things down. And I've heard this more and more lately because of the Delta 8 issue. So first, to understand this better, it's important to know that the component in marijuana that causes the highs and hallucination is the THC, or the Delta 9 THC, and that's another form of THC. Delta 8 is another form of THC, but it is less potent. remember, THC, or specifically the delta-9 THC, has been legally separated from CBD in the 2018 Farm Bill. Currently, the legality of delta-8 is hazy. Pardon the pun, by the way. THC can be derived from hemp or cannabis and can be manufactured from hemp derived from CBD directly, and that's the loophole. This provides that loophole you referred to in selling the delta-8 THC form over the counter. And this is unfortunate because it continues, it drives me nuts, it continues to play into the bias for the use of CBD in medicine.
Yeah, and we see that too, and I'm glad that you clarified that for the audience because I think it needed to be said.
Be careful of that the delta-8 form, especially when you're talking about treating kids, or if you have pets, or if you have different medications that you're on. Got to be very careful of those delta-8 forms. You're going to see a lot of this in the future. Marketing of this. Yeah,
thanks, Doc. And so I want to get back to CBD in general, and specifically some of the recommendations that you make. Of the people that come and visit you, is there sort of a common denominator of people you've treated that maybe get better results with CBD? Would you be able to classify that?
Oh, yeah. Well, shoot. The sleep thing is a common thing. Probably the three most common conditions that I get asked for about CBD is headache, a chronic pain syndrome, whether it be a low back pain, an orthopedic pain. Those are the common things that I see, common symptoms I see when it comes to what people ask for. Like we talked about earlier, weight issues. I backtrack a little bit to the headache thing. One headache is different than another, right? Some people just get headaches from not drinking enough water, and some people get headaches because they've been afflicted with migraines since they were kids. So this is a very common condition, and I see a lot of success with those conditions.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's good to know. At least if you have those conditions, you have some hope on getting some solutions there. And, in my family, we use our full spectrum CBD oil for everything. And it's not something that we talk about often is skin-related conditions, dry skin, bug bites, acne.
Rashes.
We get a lot of people that call, especially parents, that say, hey, my kid's going through that time, or I have some acne that's popping up. What do you think about the likelihood of CBD working on a topical perspective there for any skin-related issues?
I'm glad you mentioned that because that's another common misconception or a common problem that we see with over-the-counter products is that, I'll be frank, I've taken a lot of these over-the-counter products, topicals, to the lab, and we find that there's very little CBD or it's CBD that's been over-processed. If there's any CBD at all, many of the products that we found, there's no CBD products at all, which you end up finding. What we do find in these topicals, these over-the-counter topicals, are a lot of the usual stuff that's found in topical joint relief or pain relief things. So things like capsaicin, salicylates, things that's an aspirin derivative that helps with pain. Counter irritants like that methanol, methanol feeling, that camphor feeling, and even anesthetics we have found in those topicals. So those things that are actually helping, not the CBD, they just throw that CBD in as a marketing tool to push that product.
Yeah. You were starting to talk about some recommendations on using CBD or full spectrum hemp oil topically. Yeah, can you get back to that?
Yeah, real quickly, you can use a good oil tincture, a good full spectrum oil tincture directly on the affected area. But one of the things I recommend is a nanotized CBD, and you can use the oil tincture as well. You mix it with pure aloe vera gel, just without the flavorings, the colors, the perfumes, just pure aloe vera gel. Mix it and put it on that area, whether it's a rash, as long as there's no open wounds, to be real clear about that. You can put it on the rash or the affected joint. That's a good way to deliver CBD locally. But my favorite way, if somebody has a rash that's really bothersome or a joint that's really bothersome, the best way to do it is systemically as a tincture under the tongue.
That's great advice, and I hadn't heard that. I have an aloe plant, or Linda has one right by the window. You can just break that up, put it in your hand, mix it with the CBD, and then apply it. And that helps more for topical, or would you say for dry skin, or rash, or bug bite, or joint as well?
Every bit of it.
Soft tissue.
Aloe vera has very wonderful anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties.
That's great. Well, we'll brag about our product after this and later, but we do have a phone call for you, Doc G. This is George from the Eastern Shore. He's got a question for you. George, you're live with Dr. Benjamin González.
Yeah, how you doing, Dr. González?
I'm good.
So I thought of something, another question. What about the idea of mixing CBD in like juicing or a tea or something with turmeric, ginger, and other herbal things? And what about DMSO as far as they say it makes the herbs more available for like healing and pain relief? Just a general question.
No, absolutely. Now remember, when you're mixing compounds, you're basically playing chemist. You're mixing chemicals, and those chemicals can react. Sometimes when you're mixing CBD with other types of terpenes, other types of compounds, they can react together and either diminish the effectiveness, or it can help each other. They can help each other out. In general, mixing CBD with ginger, things like that, is okay. Some people can't tolerate the CBD itself, especially the ones that are very bitter, the CBDs that are really bitter, that have all the terpenes in it, all the compounds in the plant that makes that product smell and taste. So it's okay to mix. I'm very okay with that. It's always good to mix it with as few compounds and chemicals as possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see. So better to take.
It's great for shakes. It's great for shakes, the protein shakes, things like that. Putting the oil-based tincture in a protein shake is a great way to deliver.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you could hear that, Doc G, but Georgia said, just so to clarify, it's better to take it separate and individually than to mix it before, because you're not really sure how it may react before you take it, and that is accurate, George. Thanks for calling, man. We got to get to one more call. We really appreciate you taking the time to reach out to us and Doc G today.
Thanks for the question.
So thank you, George. Yeah, it's a great question. The next question, Doc G, and we don't have much time here, but this is Robert in Towson. Robert, what do you got for Dr. Benjamin González?
Yeah, we talk about CBD as being anti-inflammatory. So the question is there any evidence that CBD has an impact on the progression long-term, not acute use, for chronic inflammatory conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, irritable bowel disease? Any evidence that it impacts the longer-term progression?
Great question. There is, when it comes to GI symptoms, the CB1, CB2 receptors that are found in the gut, there is great evidence that shows that the consistent use of CBD can help with conditions like Crohn's, irritable bowel. Patients who have had surgeries due to whatever reason, gut surgeries, also helps as well. But when it comes to all those other conditions, there aren't very many human studies for long-term effects. What's interesting is you can extrapolate from the high antioxidant and antioxidant studies out there for other conditions. You can extrapolate the use of CBD and its powerful anti-inflammatory properties for helping chronic conditions. And we've seen this clinically. It's clinically relevant. We see clinical response. But there are not a lot of human studies out there. There needs to be more. As I mentioned earlier, there's more coming.
Yeah. So the CBD anti-inflammatory pathway is really a different pathway, than.
Oh, absolutely, and that's why That's why it's important to do these studies. University of Arizona has got a great program. Israel, there's great studies happening in Israel and happening at the University of Arizona looking at these different pathways. They are different.